Shalom Mubarak, I miss by God. First and foremost, all praises to Yah for this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. We're about to learn the truth about the Jordan River, how it should not exist. This is a Patreon slideshow presentation. Please support my Patreon because I am raising the funds in order to look at the land and further prove that it is our homeland. I will find artifacts. I will find structures. I will find this stuff in Northwestern America. I just need the support from my loyal subscribers. And I just want to thank you all one more time for all the people who did support my Patreon. I just want to thank you. May you all be blessed by Yahuwah for your help that you have provided. Now, let's just get right into it. The Jordan River of the Levant is man-made and should not even exist. It all used to be Lake Lisan. So look, I just wanted to tell you this. Every scientist, Google, they'll tell you, oh, Lake Lisan, that existed millions and millions of years ago, blah, blah, blah. And, recently it never existed. But archaeologically, that doesn't add up. I disagree with the amount of time. Millions? Nah, that's too much of a stretch. But I would say during the time of the flood is when the Lake Lisan existed, and it just started to shrink gradually over time. But it did not shrink by itself completely. All right, it became a river due to man. Originally, Lake Lisan was 700 feet deep, and it just started to shrink gradually over time. All right, then by the time of Moses, Lake Lisan was at most 100 feet deep in some areas. But we have proof, archaeological proof. Well, I have archaeological proof, and I'm not even an archaeologist, that Lake Lisan had to at least still existed into the Bronze Age of man civilization during the time of at least Moses, because the city of Jericho, which they claim to be the oldest city on earth, is just a random city that they claim to be the oldest city on earth. Why did they decide to build it on a hill? Because they live in the lowest area of the earth. They will flood if they didn't build on a hill. They will flood. You understand? That's proof that the Jordan River, which is that small little trickle of water over there, was at one point much bigger. And it wasn't even a river, it was actually a lake. It wasn't until the time that the Egyptians conquered the Levant that the Lake Lisan completely was transformed into the small trickle of the Jordan River, and I will prove it. Let's move on to slide 2, shall we? So, Jordan River Valley, where the modern Dead Sea and Jericho are abnormally low in elevation, the lowest places on earth. It is a huge crack in the earth. New Orleans don't got nothing on this place. It's literally 768 feet below sea level. If one hurricane hits it, the city of Jericho would be under almost 800 feet of water. And the reason being is because, as you can see, the city of Jericho is like where you see that, this blue right here, this bright blue, that's 766 feet below sea level. You understand? If a hurricane hits it, like Hurricane Katrina were to hit modern Israel, all the rain will fall from the mountains into this area. All the rain will slide from the mountains into this area. They will come from the hills, and they will trickle down all the way into this area and fill this entire thing up with water. Plus the rain that's just simply falling on here. Then you got rain from mountains coming from both sides. It's gonna flood this entire piece. Luckily, modern Israel barely gets rain. There's barely any rain in this whole area, right? I understand you guys. Oh, well, y'all cursed our land, so it's not gonna have that much rain. True, but what about when we did live there? Then it would have a normal amount of rain, correct? And this whole area would be flooded. We see Israel on the maps. Oh, that's a big land. No, the hell it ain't. Understand, modern Israel is half the size of Louisiana and double the size of Rhode Island. It's a very small area, right? This right here, it's only 20 miles from the ocean. Now, I just want to tell you, if there were to be some type of earthquake in the Mediterranean and a tsunami were to happen, this is out of there. All right, everybody here is dead. Crack in the earth. It's literally a crack in the earth. Why would y'all put you in the lowest place on earth? That's my thing. He put us up in the mountains. He put us in the high places. We dwell in the high places. We are closer to the heavens. Why would he put us closer to the pits of hell? We go outside. We in the mountains of Utah, Nevada, California. We go outside and the moon is right there. We are high up. Meanwhile, you in modern Israel, the moon look like a dot in the sky. You can't even see nothing. Everything's so far away. You're in the low. This whole area is the lowest place on earth. Just simply put, it's the lowest area on earth. Why would y'all give us the lowest area on earth, the closest to Sheol, the farthest from him? Does that make sense? All right. Slide 3. So, like I said, we're looking at a body of land half the size of Louisiana and double the size of Rhode Island. But can somebody please explain to me why there are so many dams in this small area? And not only are there so many dams in this area, the oldest dam on earth was built in Jordan by a civilization similar to whoever built these dams. You understand? We're looking at Jordan right now. The majority of these dams are in Jordan because Jordan has the highest mountains, which make rivers that flow into the Jordan River. These mountains are not snow-capped, but they have natural springs underneath. And these springs trickle down and they would naturally fill up this into one big lake. However, what do we see? They just needed this land to be fertile. See, the Jordan River wasn't made on purpose to deceive people. They just needed that area cleared because Lake Lisan was too deep and it made it hard for people to pass from one area to another. And plus, people just wanted more fertile land to live on. So they constructed these dams all on the east side of the modern Jordan River, where the tall mountains are in modern Jordan. And what's going on is they're stopping the water flow, the natural water flow that's supposed to come from the east, from right here. So the natural water flow is supposed to come and build up in this extremely deep area. Guys, this is an extremely deep crack in the earth right here. Water's supposed to fall. You know, what does water do? It finds this level. It's supposed to fill this up like a cup, right? But they said, no, we're going to build dams. We're going to stop this river. And they successfully did it. Now you just have small little trickles of water flowing into it, forming the small little trickle of water that we have today, falsely called the Jordan River. It's man-made. It's supposed to be a lake. So let's look at this. Why so many dams in one area? Because they're trying to keep the Jordan River from naturally filling up and being the lake it's supposed to be. They're trying to keep it from filling up because if it fills up, there's people dead, there's cattle dead, there's less fertile soil, it's harder to cross. There's many reasons why they wanted this to be cleared. And now, because they're trying to hide the fact that there is supposed to be one salt body of water here. So the whole Jordan River, Sea of Chinnereth, in the Salt Sea system that we find in scripture can exist over here. Slide 4. Biblical events did not even take place in Levantine areas. What are Levantine areas? The Middle East, all right? Historically speaking, this area was only controlled by 3 main empires. Notice I say main because this place did have a lot of other peoples that, you know, are not even mentioned in scripture that lived in this area. But we're going to talk about the 3 main empires. The New Kingdom Egypt under Thutmose III. So what we know is this is historical, guys. Facts, all right? Egypt conquered here before anybody else. People don't want to talk about it because it contradicts the Bible, but all of this is Egypt. All of this is Egypt too. They believe it contradicts the Bible, but that's only because they're looking in the wrong place. All of this was Egypt. Egypt gained this area here. What people don't know is Egypt conquered the Levant. And they conquered the Levant before even the time of Moses, according to some historians. So it wouldn't even make sense for Israel to invade this land. The historical dates don't make sense. And guys, yeah, I know you're gonna say, oh well, he said Egypt is in America, so how could it be right here? Nah, there was 3 Egyptian societies in the world. The word Egypt is a Greek name. What people don't know and realize, biblical events in chronological order could not have happened in this area at all. Just because of history, Thutmose the third, according to scholars, he lived in 1479 BC. That's way before the time of David. David, who lived in 1035 BC, according to scholars. But Thutmose owned all of this land. So I'm assuming, at least during the time of like the judges, Samson and all them, after the time of Moses and Joshua, after the time we already took the land. We own the land. It's our land. Probably during the time of Samson, during the time of Deborah, during the time of Jael, and all those judges, Egypt owned all of this land. What scripture can we find that said Egypt conquered Israel? It's a proven fact that Egypt conquered this land here. What scripture can we find that says Egypt conquered Israel? We just simply cannot find it. Thutmose III owned all this land, and this was before David. But we don't find any scripture talking about it, right? Because first of all, 2 things. This ain't Israel, and this ain't the biblical Egypt, right? This is three types of people made up this entire empire: the Kushi people, the Puntite people, and the Kemet people, which it was unified under the name Kemet. They never called themselves Mizraim. They only called themselves Kemet, which comes from the Hebrew word Kem, which means Ham. They called themselves the Puntites, which are the children of Phut. And they called themselves Kushi, the children of Cush. But they never called themselves Mizraim. Mizraim is a child of Ham that lives only in North America. He cannot be found in the entire great continent of Africa. Mizraim can only be found in 2 regions of North and Central America. And that is the area ranging from the Grand Canyon all the way to the southern tip of Illinois down to the southern tip of Louisiana. This is the original Mizraim territory. That's why you can find places called Missouri, Mississippi, etc. in this area. Now, the second Mizraim civilization in Central America is at the southern Central America with the Maya civilization, whose language was almost identical to that of hieratic Egyptian language. You understand? Now, the Kushites, I have a video on them. Kushites, they had empires in the Americas as well as Africa. Cush did not just live in one spot. There was no one Ethiopia. The land specifically called Cush in Genesis, when it says it can pass the entire land of Cush, or pass the entire land of Africa, or where it said it passed the entire land of Ethiopia, that's referring to Africa, because Africa in scripture is known as the land of Cush. But what else is also known as the land of Cush? Brazil. Brazil, guys. And you also had Cushites living in California. They were a split up group of people who separated themselves from the main body of Cush. The main body of Cush, when Cush lived, the actual son of Ham, he lived before Peleg. So what does that mean? Since he lived before Peleg, the grandfather of Abraham, the earth was still in one continent, one landmass. Y'all had divided the continents up because the people had rebelled against him, and he had divided the continents up so they would never unify again against him. You understand? So y'all did not want people to ever unify into one nation again, because if they did, they would rebel against y'all, just like they did under the Tower of Babel. So what he did, he confounded the languages and broke the earth. But before he broke the earth, you had a civilization on the Gihon River called Cush. And when the earth broke, one part stayed in Africa and one part stayed in Brazil. So now you got Cushites in both Africa and in Brazil. But many scholars will even announce that South America is who brought civilization to Africa, because the Cushites came from South America. They did. Even Africans will tell you they come from Persia.
What I know about Chaminuga, it's a long story of Chaminuga. Chaminuga's body was surviving in Persia. Do you know Persia?
Yes.
That's where most black people came from.
And I have two maps, three. I have three maps that call South America Persia, specifically the area of Peru. It calls it Persia. You understand? In Hebrew, Persia is Paras. Paras means fruitful area. If you look in Iran, which they call Persia, it's one of the driest places on earth. It's not a fruitful area. You understand? So Persia or Paras is a fruitful green place according to scripture. So we must understand this first and foremost. I have three maps that call South America, specifically the area around Peru, Persia. These three maps I will not show you right now. They are disclosed because only my Patreons can see them right now. I will eventually show them on my YouTube channel, but everything I post on my Patreon has to stay on my Patreon for at least 3 months, or until all my patrons have seen it. They have first access to all information outside of law and outside of pure scripture. Anything that has to do with maps, anything that has to do with archaeological research, anything that has to do with books, my patrons will know it first, and they will have this knowledge before anybody on YouTube at least 3 months. So in about a few months, you will see these three maps. You'll see these three maps that show Persia being in South America. Or you can just, support my Patreon and look at them right now. But anyway, I just want to point out, Egypt owned all this land. All of it. And what did they do? It says, basically, biblical events did not take place in Levantine areas. Historically speaking, this area was only controlled by three main empires: New Kingdom Egypt under Thutmose III, the Idumeans under Herod, and the Romans under Octavian. So that's three empires that controlled the Levant, controlled the Middle East, and that is New Kingdom Egypt, the Romans under Octavian, and the Idumeans. So who are the Idumeans? I just want to point this out first. The Idumeans are the Edomites. The Edomites left the land which they were supposed to live in, which was Seir, right? You read in scripture that Esau dwelt in Seir, but Esau made war with Israel for very many years, and eventually Israel killed everybody out of the land. Everybody. They wiped out the entire land of Edom completely, to the point where there was no inhabitant. However, the Edomites still are alive today. So how are they still alive today if Israel destroyed all the Edomites? They left the land. They moved east. Just like scripture said, they will be with Moab and Ammon, who also went east. They had to get the F away from Israel. Israel was a strong, powerful nation who can consume and annihilate anybody. A lot of people started leaving North America to get away from North America because we were so powerful. That's why you have the Moors. The Moors are Moabites and Ammonites from America, right? And where do they live? In Northern Africa, in Spain, in Europe, Iberia. What does Iberia mean? Iberia means Hebrew. It comes from the word Iber, people from beyond. It was founded by the black Moors who moved to the area. They came from the sea. The people who crossed the sea, people who came from North America. You understand that? So when we get to the bottom of this stuff, we see and we understand and we recognize that the land is in America. The Edomites left North America and they tried to find a land that looked like Edom. They ended up in Saudi Arabia. But they said, you know what? I hate this nigga Israel, man. I hate these people. I want to be them so bad. My forefather came out the womb first. He should have had the blessing. And I don't care what y'all has to say about it. I want the blessing. I'm going to get the blessing. I'm going to be the new Israel. So what did Edom do? Edom created a new Jerusalem. King Herod was a Jew. Well, Jewish, right? But he was an Edomite by blood. Because the entire kingdom of the Idumeans converted themselves to Judaism. And they named all the cities in Idumea after biblical cities. And that's why you got a Jerusalem in the other side of the world. That's why you got a Jericho on the other side of the world. That's why you got a Beersheba on the other side of the world. And that's why they're in the wrong places. They didn't understand and just put them in the exact right spot that they're supposed to go. If you watch my Gracious series, I expose how those cities are in wrong places compared to what scripture says they should be. So with that being said, who named those places? The Idumeans. The Idumeans lived there, who are Edomites, but they were calling themselves Jews. They founded this area. They didn't even call it Israel. They just called it Judea. And what happened? The Romans came in 70 AD, turned against them. Check out this clip that I put in New Testament on Trial. It's important to understand this. It's really important. Invaded Judea, killing hundreds of thousands of people under the order of soon-to-be Emperor Titus Vespasian, also of the Flavian dynasty, a close relative to the Pisos. This took place in the spring of 70 AD. There were millions of Jews in the Roman Empire at the time, most of which lived outside of Judea. But the reason the Romans specifically targeted Judea, because the Romans knew that the Idumean Jews of Judea began to increase in wealth and power. Judea professed to be its own state, distinguished from the rest of the Roman Empire. They set up their own power city, Jerusalem, or should I say, New Jerusalem, which was later mocked in the book of Revelations. In Revelations 21 and 2, we see that the writer states that there was a new Jerusalem that was coming down from God out of heaven. This can mean a few different things. Jerusalem coming down could also mean Jerusalem was destroyed. Judea was occupied by Idumeans, so Esau. We see in Obadiah that Esau made himself high and dwelt among the stars, but they would eventually come down and become betrayed by the people they once had confederacy with, then be driven out from their border. Idumea's confederacy was with the Romans, who drove them out of Judea.
It says from God, because Titus was deified and called God by the Roman citizens. Judea was run by powerful Idumean high priests who would not accept the blatant lies and mockery that would come in the New Testament. The Romans knew this. That's why Judea was invaded. The people who fled from Judea were not Israelites, but Edomite wannabes. This can be proven because the Herodian Idumean class of Judea seemed to have vanished after the destruction of Judea and Herod's temple in 70 AD. Shortly after this war, Arius began writing the book of Matthew.
So yeah, as we can see here from this clip that I just showed you from New Testament on Trial, the Edomites lived there until 70 AD and the Romans chased them out of the land. Isn't that simple? Just like what Scripture in Obadiah said, the people who they thought they were confederate with turned on them. And where did they flee to? They fled to Saudi Arabia, they fled to Eastern Africa, Eritrea, and I think that's how you pronounce that country. And they fled to Somalia. They spread to that area. So you got Edomites in the east coast of Africa, you got Edomites in Saudi Arabia. All those are the Edomites, man. That's why they have a lot of our traditions. That's why Arabic is so similar. Arabic is when the Iranian civilization mixed itself with the Edomite civilization. But the Edomites spoke pure Hebrew because they're our brother. Of course, they're going to speak the same language as us. But you see, the dialect is completely different. That's Medo-Persian, which they call Medo-Persian. It's not the real Persian because the real Persian is in Peru. But they call it Medo-Persian dialect. All right? When the ancient Iranian civilization mixed its culture with the Edomites who were new to the land, they formed the Arabic language. But the Arabic language is originally Hebrew from America. Never Israel or Hebrews from the lineage of Jacob. I meant to say that because Edomites are Hebrews. Never Israel or Hebrews lived in this area except for the Edomites. And all of these empires had extensive knowledge of damming and dammed up Lake Lisan to turn it to an agricultural river valley. The first people who lived there, which were some little scattered tribes that lived in Jordan, they realized how to make dams and they made some dams. But then New Kingdom Egypt took over and they started really advancing the dams because they said, yeah, we need that area to be cleared. But who else was making the very advanced dams? The Romans. So they started making extensive dams. The Idumeans, they started making extensive dams until that area is only a trickle in a stream instead of the lake that it once was. So look, the Idumeans, Edomites, were the first fake Jews. They wanted to be us so bad, they gave all the Idumean cities biblical names. Herod himself even built a new Jerusalem and a temple called Herod's Temple, which was attacked in 70 AD by the Romans. The Idumeans fled into Africa. See, we think that's us. We learned about 70 AD, 1 million black Jews fled into Africa. Who were those black Jews? The Idumeans. They were black. They looked like us. You feel me? They looked like us. They had our traditions. So of course the Romans even believed, oh, these are the people. They're not the people. They even called themselves Idumeans. They knew they wasn't the people, but they still thought, oh, they the closest you get. And they also brought a lot of scriptures and scrolls over there. And King Solomon messed up by having so many wives, Edomite wives. He had many Edomite wives. King Solomon had to write many copies of Torah. Many copies of Torah. All it took is one of them women to get one of them copies of Torah and bring that Torah to their family and flee and go all the way to the other side of earth and bring Torah to the other side of earth and start a whole religion, a false religion, Judaism. Then over time, more people started coming, bringing other books over there. And they started learning other things. Because that was during the time of Alexander the Great, but we're not going to get there right now. But this is exactly what happened. This was because a brother asked me about the 70 AD thing. He was confused. I said, you know, check out my next video. This is the breakdown of that. That's what really happened. That's why after 70 AD, the Idumeans ceased to exist in modern Israel. They were wiped out and chased into Africa. That's not our history. That's our brother's history.